Namajantam Vyasanarnave Yamam Udarate Pragyam Vipayanti Pade Pade. Translation. Kindly let me know the whereabouts of that beautiful woman who always saves me when I am drowning in the ocean of danger. By giving me good intelligence at every step, she always saves me. Srila Prabhupada's purport. There is no difference between a good wife and good intelligence. One who possesses good intelligence can deliberate properly and save himself from many dangerous conditions. In material existence, there is danger at every step. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-58, it is said, Padam padam yad vipadam natesham. This material world is not actually a place of residence for an intelligent person or a devotee, because here there is danger at every step. Vaikuntha is the real home for the devotee, for there is no anxiety and no danger. Good intelligence means becoming Krishna conscious. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said, Krishna ye bhaje se bada chatura. Unless one is Krishna conscious, he cannot be called an intelligent person. Herein we see that King Puranjana was searching after his good wife, who always helped him out of the dangerous situations that always occur in material existence. As already explained, a real wife is Dharma Patni. That is, a woman accepted in marriage by ritualistic ceremony is called Dharma Patni, which signifies that she is accepted in terms of religious principles. Children born of a Dharma Patni inherit the property of the father, but children born of a woman who is not properly married do not inherit the father's property. The word Dharma Patni also refers to a chaste wife. A chaste wife is one who never had any connection with men before her marriage. Once a woman is given the freedom to mingle with all kinds of men in her youth, it is very difficult for her to keep chaste. When butter is brought into the proximity of fire, it melts. The woman is like fire, and man is like the butter. But if one gets a chaste wife accepted through a religious marriage ritual, she can be of great help when one is threatened by the many dangerous situations of life. Actually, such a wife can become the source of all good intelligence. With such a good wife, the family's engagement in the devotional service of the Lord actually makes a home a grihastha ashram or household dedicated to spiritual cultivation. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahoditao Gaudodaya Pushpavantao Chitra Shando Tamonudao Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Dear devotees, Sarvatma Prabhu, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to try to speak something of the Krishna conscious philosophy. And thank you very much, devotees, for being in attendance. I'm very happy to have your virtual association. I'm here in Poland, in a city called Katowice. Although there's no deserts in Poland, if there's a desert, it must be Katowice, because I'm deprived of the regular association of the devotees. So that's a huge challenge. And so I'm very grateful for any online association that I get. So Srila Prabhupada is speaking very wonderfully, as always. We're deeply blessed that we have Srila Prabhupada's purports his presentation of Krishna consciousness, uncompromising, always to the point. He's a sadhu, perfect sadhu. He has no need to mince words. He has no need to compromise on the truth. He's come from the spiritual world as a representative of Krishna to give the pure message. And what the souls do with that message, that's up to them. But Prabhupada has come on behalf of Krishna and done what Krishna has requested him to do. So here Prabhupada is talking about good intelligence. And he's saying that someone who is Krishna conscious has good intelligence. And pretty much anyone who is not Krishna conscious doesn't have good intelligence, clear intelligence. What does that mean? Prabhupada says that the material world, quotes, the material world is a place where there's danger at every step. So this is something which eludes most people. Most people maintain a great hope that somehow or other, things can be adjusted in the material world. Somehow or other, by some process, by some advancement of medicine or science or intelligence or economics, we can make the material world into a place which is enjoyable and minimize the sufferings of life. But this is immediately rejected by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. All the endeavors for millions of years of people to try to adjust the material world, in 2 words, Krishna dismisses it. All the books that have been written about how to be happy, how to be peaceful, how to create harmony in the world, how to adjust things, dismissed with 2 words from Lord Krishna, Dukalayam Ashashvatam, miserable and temporary. This is Krishna's conclusion. And he knows, he built the thing. He understands it perfectly. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest. All are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. And when you go to some places, it's not at all evident. If you go to the higher planets, where's the misery? It doesn't look like misery at all. It looks like enjoyment. We hear the descriptions in the scriptures of places like Svargaloka, the supreme vacation destination, Indra's abode, beautiful Nanda Kanana gardens, perfect atmosphere, beautiful trees, beautiful gardens, everything is perfectly landscaped. I think that's the place where the mangoes are so big, I don't recall whether that's the actual plant. The mangoes are so big that when they fall, they splatter and they create a river of mango juice. And then when the mango juice dries up on the sides of that river of mango juice, it turns into gold. And the residents of that place, they pick up the gold and fashion it and wear it as jewelry. They live for unbelievably long periods of time. Everyone is more or less pleasant. Envy is not very prominent there. Everyone has beautiful bodily features. The sense gratification is of the highest standard. So it doesn't appear to be a place of misery, but it's temporary. Dukalayam, okay. Dukalayam is not so prominent during that time period, but Ashashvatam, it ends. It ends and then one ends up again, struggling, toiling in a place which is very visibly miserable, like the planet Earth in Kali Yuga. And even that's not evident to people. If we consider our youth, and I think many of the people on this conference call are, at least coming towards their 40s, 50s, hopefully, they've been through a bit of life. But I remember when I was in high school and college, minimum responsibilities. And, at the peak of life, the body is healthy, the friendships, the gratifications, very little much less stress, much less stress. And the great hope of happiness in life. The opportunities all seem in front of us. Oh, yes. Somehow or other, I'll chalk out a nice, happy, peaceful, pleasant life. But then as one continues in life and gets more experience, typically one is confronted with the realities of life. Not so much if you join the Hare Krishna movement. You go from, let's say, being a college student, you're experiencing some of the pangs of life, but then you might become a brahmachari. And if you're doing it right, you're not mixing so much with the material energy. Minimum mixing with the material energy. Full engagement in devotional service. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. And the only mixing with the external world is you go out on Sankirtan or for some seva. So that's not really mixing with the material world. You go on Sankirtan and you're in the presence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu if you're doing it properly. And you don't feel so much the pangs of material existence. Whatever challenges there might be there during Sankirtan, still you get the bliss, the ecstasy of serving the mission of Mahaprabhu. I saw this little clip, Radha Kund Mataji. She's a great Prabhupada disciple, wonderful book distributor from long, long time back. I believe she lives in Vrindavan now. She sometimes comes to Mayapur. So she was being interviewed and she was mentioning that someone asked Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, when we go on Sankirtan, when we go to sell your books, we experience so much happiness. How is it that we're experiencing so much happiness on Sankirtan? And she said that Prabhupada said that when you go and sell my books, Mahaprabhu comes down and embraces you. So in that kind of engagement, one doesn't feel the pangs of material existence. One is not even in the material world. Of course, the challenges are there, but more or less the involvement with the material energy is minimal. So one is a little bit quite aloof from that whole experience. When I was in Mayapur as a brahmachari, I was teaching in the ashram school there. I was an ashram teacher, and my service would go from 3:30 in the morning. I'd wake up the boys. We're all living in one ashram, me and 13 teenagers. And then we wake up, prepare ourselves to go to the temple, and my seva would go until 9:30 when they would go for academic classes. And then I would be off for some time until lunch when my seva would continue. So during that time, especially during the winter, I would finish my seva. Because it was Mayapur and it was the winter time. And in Bengal, the custom is that you put on mustard oil on your body and you sit in the sun, and that protects you from illness. So I would cover myself with mustard oil. I would lay in the sun and I would put on headphones and just listen to lectures for 2 hours. And Ritadvija Swami, sometimes he would be passing by because he was at the school at the time for a little while. And he'd look and he'd smile, and I'd take off the headphones and he says, Taradas, looks like you beat the system. So I was very happy to beat the system. And then as life goes, one realizes one is not fit for the brahmachari ashram for life. Reality sets in. So I thought, okay, it's time to shift ashrams. So I got married. And somehow or other, I was engaged in preaching in Greece. And that whole engagement was absorbing and satisfying and sharing Krishna consciousness with people. Again, one doesn't feel as much the pangs of the material energy. And at a certain point, when my son turned 3, sorry to get so personal, but to tell my story, but anyway, it's relevant, I think, to some degree to the purport and to the topic under discussion. When my son turned 3, we thought best to move to Mayapur, shift to Mayapur. So that's what we did. We shifted to Mayapur, and life was very nice in Mayapur, very simple. There was devotional service. The whole atmosphere was supportive, favorable, Mayapur, perfect place to live for one who's trying to practice Krishna consciousness, raise a Krishna conscious family. And I used to read in Prabhupada's books, there's one purport where Prabhupada says that 99.9% of people are unhappy in married life. Prabhupada says that. 90, and I thought, I'm it. I'm the 0.1%. You know? How am I so fortunate? I beat the system. But that's not how the material world works, is it? Padam padam yad vipadam natesham. When life looks like easy street, there's danger at your door. Sometimes it's just a nice sunny day. Even in Mayapur, you'd be there in July or something, and it'd be a nice sunny day. You'd be at the Ganga, and it'd be quite pleasant, and you're there with the students in the Ganga, and then just on the horizon, suddenly there's some really dark clouds coming very quickly, and the weather changes real quickly from a nice, normal, sunny, fresh day into an absolute raging storm, and so you just have to take shelter. So that's how the material world works. So I went from that situation, in a sense, perfect environment for practicing Krishna consciousness, for my personal cultivation, for raising my son, for having seva, and somehow by life circumstances, now I'm in a situation which is not as favorable. So that's just how life works. Life is totally, in a sense, unpredictable, but in a sense, very predictable. Padam padam yad vipadam natesham. Trouble is just waiting to happen. And the thing is that we always think it's happening to someone else. Just like very frequently, I'm driving on the highway in Poland, and then you see someone who's broken down on the side of the road. And it can be a Volvo, a BMW, a Fiat, whatever. Someone's broken down on the side of the road. And you think, that guy's broken down on the side of the road. It happens to other people. Other people break down on the side of the road. And then 3 days, that was my thought process, And 3 days ago, I'm driving back from a town, and suddenly the car starts misbehaving, and I'm broken down on the side of the road. Of course, that's a very insignificant inconvenience, but it's an example. Tough stuff happens to other people, we think. Economic, financial issues, health issues, family issues, major calamities where, their life gets turned upside down. We think it happens to other people. But the other people sometimes turns out to be us. When Yamaraj asked Yudhishthira Maharaj, the wisest person on earth, what's the greatest thing? What is the greatest thing is that every moment we see someone is headed towards death. Every moment someone's dying. What do you think? Yes, but not me. It's something theoretical. Something theoretical. Yes, I know theoretically I'll die, but everyone is imagining they're gonna live for many, many more years, no matter how old they are. So this is the nature of illusion and the nature of ignorance. And a Krishna conscious person who's taking their knowledge from the right source, they're freed of this foolishness. They understand the material world for what it is, a place which is absolutely unstable, where there's no possibility of permanent happiness, despite all the endeavors we make, despite all the scientific advancement, medical advancement, economic advancement. It's built for inflicting trouble on the souls of this world. And all the so-called remedial measures, they fail in the end. All of them. All the material efforts, they fail. Just like my brother-in-law, he was going out with his daughter and her friend, and they were going to some school, visit some school, driving, and then they stopped on the highway. There was a stoplight, So they stopped, and the lady behind, who was blasting down the highway, she was, absent-minded, whatever, texting, not noticing. She came slamming into the back of their car, really smashed the car. And somehow or other, all three of them were spared. The car was mangled, and the lady who smashed into them, she ended up in the hospital in pretty serious condition. But at least my relatives were spared the brunt of the accident. And then the family was getting together and discussing. They were giving their firm conclusion about what had happened. And after much discussion, the conclusion was that we should all get a Mercedes, like my brother has, my brother-in-law, because it was a Mercedes. It's a very strong car. And if it hadn't been a Mercedes, they would have all died. That was the conclusion. Because of the Mercedes, they averted death, right? So we should all get a Mercedes. And in this way, we will be able to counteract this power of death. Not that this most major event of life, death, it doesn't get any more major than that. That's not dictated by the supreme being. No, that's dictated by whether you have, a Mercedes or a Fiat. That's their conclusion. So the devotees are freed from this foolishness because we take knowledge from the right source. We understand that the only shelter is Krishna. Krishna is the only one who can shelter us from the troubles of life. And he doesn't shelter us from the physical calamities of life. He doesn't shelter us necessarily from the financial troubles of life. He doesn't shelter us from the political troubles of life. He shelters us from the ultimate troubles of life. One who is wise sees the evil of birth and death. He sees that's the real problem. I'm in a place which is not my home. I'm an eternal soul, and I'm living in this temporary material world. It's not the home of the soul. The soul is not meant to experience this material existence, which is by nature full of stress, full of fear. The only person who doesn't experience stress and fear in this world is the person who's fully, perfectly sheltered at Krishna's lotus feet. I'm trying to remember the question that was asked Prabhupada, something like, what is it like to have your level of Krishna consciousness? Something along those lines. And Prabhupada said, his answer, paraphrasing, was, I have no fear, which is an astonishing thing. Because in this world, everyone has fear, no matter who you are. If you have no money, you have fear. If you have money, you have fear. If you have good health, you're afraid you'll lose it. If you have no health, you're afraid, you have fear. Oh my God, what will come of the future? The only person who has no fear is the person who's fully sheltered, not partially sheltered, fully sheltered at Krishna's lotus feet. And that's a process of how to go from where we're at to where we want to be. I was just in Simhachalam in Germany for Nrsimha Chaturdasi. Amazing, amazing place. Super focused on it's Nrsimha Tirtha. It's a holy place of Lord Nrsimhadev. There used to be Radha Krishna deities, but the authorities concluded that the mood was incompatible. Lord Nrsimhadev on one altar, and right next to them was Radha Krishna. So Radha Krishna were taken to another project, and are very nicely worshipped there. Now it's just Nrsimha Tirtha. And there in Simhachalam, you have Lord Nrsimhadev, and he's Shanti Nrsimhadev. He's already shredded Hiranyakashipu, and now he's got Prahlad Maharaj sitting on his lap, and his arm is around Prahlad Maharaj. And if you take a nice darshan of Prahlad Maharaj, you can see Prahlad Maharaj is completely peaceful, completely content, and has no stress at all. So that's the position. That's the position of a pure devotee. A pure devotee of the Lord is embraced by Krishna. He's sheltered by Krishna perfectly. He's fully aware of that shelter, of that protection. And therefore he walks through life with no fear. even at the times where things are the causes of greatest fear. Prabhupada said that during, I guess it was World War II, maybe not World War II, maybe one of the wars with Pakistan. And Prabhupada, I guess, was in Calcutta at the time, or Delhi, I don't recall. And there was planes flying overhead and bombing. And Prabhupada said that I saw that Krishna is coming in this form. It wasn't a very nice form, but it was Krishna nonetheless. So that's how the devotee experiences everything. Everything that's coming is coming from Krishna directly, because I'm trying to serve Krishna, and the devotee accepts it in that spirit without anxiety. The advanced devotee. Now, how to go from being a conditioned soul to being an advanced soul, to being a perfect soul. That's a process. That's a gradual and often arduous process. And Prabhupada is here speaking about having good intelligence. Good intelligence means the ability to navigate through the complexities of life, and in all circumstances to be able to follow the higher self. Who has that ability? Typically, someone who has cultivated a lot of Krishna consciousness has that ability. Others, sometimes doing well, sometimes not so well, because of the conditioned nature. I'll read a verse. This is from the 10th canto. This nice verse, actually I don't even have it. I don't need to read it, I'll just share it with you. So after Kalia was chastised by Lord Krishna, then the Nagapatnis, his wives, came and offered beautiful prayers to Lord Krishna and pacified Lord Krishna. He was very pacified by their prayers, and they paved the way for Kalia to now again approach the Lord. So Kalia approached the Lord in submission, bowed down before the Lord. He'd been humbled. And the first thing that came out of his mouth was, he said, "My dear Lord, I'm born as a snake. And as a snake, by nature, I'm envious and angry, and I have a lot of impurities. And it is very difficult for conditioned souls, for souls in this world, to give up their conditioned nature. So to take birth in Kali Yuga typically means something. Kali Yuga is kind of reserved for the souls who have a very low conditioned nature, who are possessed by a lot of bad qualities, by and large, possessed by bad qualities, bad tendencies, because this is the age in which a person can manifest those bad tendencies, manifest those bad qualities, and kind of fit right in. In previous ages, it would really stand out. It wouldn't be, so acceptable. But in Kali Yuga, it's perfectly acceptable. Even the bad qualities are sometimes highlighted as good qualities in Kali Yuga. And the activities which are sinful activities are by and large accepted across the board as par for the course, normal. So to take birth in Kali Yuga, it means typically to be burdened with a very strong conditioned nature. And we're engaged in a process of unconditioning ourselves through the practice of Krishna consciousness, through our sadhana, through our seva, through association with devotees. But what we find typically is that we struggle. We struggle with old tendencies, with old habits, and our intelligence very often fails us. So in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna is speaking to Uddhava. And I will now read that verse, if I can pull it up. Let's see. This is 11th canto. Yes, one should be prepared for class. All right, I'm not going to pull up the verse because I thought I'd saved it. I didn't. Anyway, basically, Lord Krishna is saying that my devotee, he should continue engaging in my service and my worship in a happy mood, despite sometimes falling victim to his senses. He knows that sense gratification, it leads to misery. He knows that. But because of the conditioned nature, he's not able to give it up immediately. So he should repent and carry on in a happy mood, knowing that the goal will be reached eventually. So this is the process we're engaged in. We're engaged in the process of purification, and we've been blessed with the medicine to cure ourselves of the disease and to free ourselves of this troublesome material existence and to go back home, back to Godhead. And it's just a question of application of the process and some patience and some determination. And eventually the fruit will be experienced. Thank you very much for your kindly listening. And if there's any questions or discussion, then we'll open up the floor for any further discussion.
I wonder if the verse that you were quoting is from the 10th canto, Tatenu Kampam Susumano.
No, I will pull up the verse. It's let's see if I can do it fast. It's 11:20, 27, 28. This is Krishna speaking to Uddava. Let's see what that verse is, and we'll quote it exactly. Let's see, 11th canto, 20th chapter. What did I say? 27, 28. Okay. Should I share it on the screen, or should I just read it, Sarvatmaprabhu?
Just read it.
Okay, so this is 11, 20, 27, 28. Lord Krishna's instructions to Uddhava. Having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories, being disgusted with all material activities, knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment, my devotee should remain happy and worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though he is sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment, my devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to a miserable result, and he sincerely repents such activities. So we know it's poison, but sometimes it's the conditioned nature and the weak intelligence pushes to taste the poison again and again. So that's a very nice verse, encouraging verse. Lord Krishna encouraging his devotees to carry on with an appropriate amount of repentance, not so much repentance that we become paralyzed, and not so little repentance that we become complacent, but to carry on in a happy mood, knowing that the result will come in the end.
If you don't mind, I wanted you to comment on the first sentence of the purport of today's verse. There is no difference between a good wife and good intelligence. I don't know if you diplomatically avoided that.
Yeah, that's the first line of association. right? Who do you associate more with than with your spouse? So if your spouse is a dedicated devotee of the Lord, then that can be a huge boon in life. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he recommends that in Kali Yuga, that Grihastha ashram is the most suitable ashram. Typically, people are not qualified for immediate renunciation. So Grihastha ashram is the path that the huge majority of devotees will take. And if one is blessed with a spouse who is focused on the goal, then that's like having, not only your own intelligence, but someone outside of you, their good intelligence as well, because our good intelligence often falters, fails, and therefore we take association from others, from people more advanced than us, at least as advanced or more advanced. So if our spouse is focused on Krishna, then they help us stay on track. They help to create a Krishna conscious environment in the home and to navigate the complications of living in this world, the complications that one typically doesn't experience when one is not in married life. Of course, I'm speaking to many devotees who are now living in a devotional community. So you're fortunate you have the support of that devotional community. The atmosphere is so conducive, as Prabhupada desired. Prabhupada wanted the devotees to live in very supportive environments. And whatever challenges might be there, the benefits outweigh the challenges. Because purification happens one way or another. Just like when we used to go on Sankirtan, the non-devotees used to purify us by telling us that we were useless. What are you doing? Wasting your life, you loser, stop begging, whatever they would tell us. It was purifying, very humbling. And then we'd come back to the temple and we'd mix with the devotees for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, and then pretty much read something and go to sleep until the next day, then go to the morning program. So the non-devotees would purify us. So if you're not getting purified by going out on Sankirtan and by meeting the non-devotees, then you live in a devotional community, then very often the purification takes place in the mixing with other devotees. So if one has a Krishna conscious spouse, then it's a boon. Did that answer the question? Or was that sufficient?
Yeah. No, it was fine. Yeah, and I also agree that now that we don't go out and mix with the non-devotees, we have our spouse to tell us that we are useless and we are wasting our time.
Well, I'm not sure if I shared this last time, but I had a darshan with His Holiness Niranjan Swami when I was in Mayapur. It was very nice. He's a wonderful person. And at the end of the darshan, he told me, I don't know why people come to me, and ask me for, and I was going to say, that's why, Maharaj, that's why people come to you, because you don't know why people come to you, because you're a sadhu, you're a humble, wonderful sadhu. But anyway, I was just sharing with him some of my challenges, and he said, Taradas, this will be your last birth as a married person. This was his blessing to me. This will be your last birth. And then there was a pause, and I was like, my last birth? Just as a married person. And then he said that this couple had just gotten married, and they approached him. And they said, Maharaj, please bless us to have a happy marriage. And Maharaj smiled, and he said, I bless you to have a successful marriage. So it serves its purpose. It serves the purpose of purifying us, of teaching us how to interact, with someone who you're constantly with, who typically you show your worst side to. The worst side typically comes out with your spouse. So it's a practice. It's a process of how to interact, how to tolerate, how to be forgiving, how to manifest our best side, how to serve together. and how to come out the other side, a better person, a more Krishna conscious person.
There is a question from Mitravinda Dasi. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you so much, Hare Krishna. Please set my obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, this verse has many, many layers. There's quite a bit to unpack, I'm sure, not enough time for today's class. In the verse, although we are not our bodies, there's a lot of weight put on jivas in female bodies to be responsible for men's behavior, for their sadhanic practices, for their inspiration to do seva. And I'm reflecting, there was a wonderful wedding this weekend that I went to. And so I'm just a little reveal. I'm recently divorced by a piece of paper because, vivaha, and then there's the paper wedding, right? So I was reflecting on a few things, but in this verse and other verses, it's very, very, very heavily laden with the responsibility put on the jiva in the female body. Would you reflect on that in a way that somehow gives inspiration and also clarifies, individual responsibility, which is also, an aspect of us relating in Krishna consciousness to one another and to the world?
Thank you for your question. And I'll try my best to share whatever little insights I have. So yeah, Prabhupada is following the line of the verses, and specifically the purport will be emphasizing whatever is being discussed in the verse itself. So here, Prabhupada is describing the benefits and the responsibilities of a qualified wife, having a qualified wife. In Kali Yuga, we're so poorly trained. We're trained in exactly the wrong way. We're trained just for selfish gratification. So we approach life, we approach relationships, we approach marital relationships with that heavy, heavy conditioning that this is an arrangement for my personal gratification, not for Krishna's gratification. So we're trying to do a 180 here from conditioned life, which means I'm in the center, reality revolves around me, the relationships I have are more or less meant for enhancing my agenda, to a completely different understanding of life where I'm a servant and I approach everything as a servant of Krishna and as a servant of Krishna's servants. So that's not an easy transition to make, because we do have all of the baggage we bring. We bring our baggage into our relationships, and especially, that relationship, which is a relationship which is very close, which is constant, and which is very prone to degenerate. Prabhupada made a statement that man is good, woman is good. Man and woman together, no good. Because that tends to bring out, doesn't have to, but it tends to bring out our inclination for sense gratification, for enjoying the material world. And this is my partner in that gratification. And as soon as that selfishness enters the mix, well, that's the mode of passion. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that the mode of passion, it's nectar in the beginning. The senses are stimulated and there's great hope for happiness. and there's great expectation, nectar in the beginning, and Krishna says poison in the end, because the expectations will not be satisfied. They won't be fulfilled. So both the husband and the wife, they have their responsibilities. Their primary responsibility is to assist their partner on the path, and certainly not obstruct their partner. Assist. You're a servant of Krishna, you're Krishna's property, and my job is to help you progress towards Krishna's lotus feet. You're not here for my gratification, I'm not here for your gratification, but that's a tall order. In theory, it's fine. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, I think it's Srila Bhaktisiddhanta or one of the acharyas, he says one should see one's wife as a maidservant of Krishna. She's Krishna's maidservant, and I should see her in that light and respect her in that light. So there's often a very huge gap between theory and practice and reality, because we're conditioned souls and we're habituated to viewing the world in the wrong way and acting towards the world in the wrong way. So it's a transitional process. And in transitioning, very often we come out with a lot of bruises and scrapes and scars and pain and heartbreak and mistakes. So we have the ideal, we know what the ideal is in terms of how we should interact with everyone and how we should interact with a spouse, a partner. And the only thing we can do is nourish our intelligence so we understand what the ideal is, what the proper course of action is. And then we have to nourish ourselves spiritually so that our best side can come out. Because we can have things understood in theory, but if we're not spiritually strong, it's very hard to follow through. Just like circumstances arise in life, in our relationships. And theoretically, we understand how we should respond. Okay, I know how I should respond. I know how a Krishna conscious person would respond, how a sadhu would respond. But I don't do it because I'm not spiritually strong, because my emotions are pushing me to respond in a different way. So our primary responsibility is to nourish ourselves spiritually, be as spiritually strong as possible. And from that platform, there's hope. There's hope to be a good spouse, the best spouse we can be, or the best person we can be. And in the absence of that spiritual strength, then typically what we're stuck with is our conditioned nature to one degree or another. Tempered a little bit by our intelligence, that voice which is saying, but shouldn't you be doing this instead? Shouldn't you be acting like this instead? And the conditioned nature typically overwhelms that little voice, that little Krishna conscious intelligence voice. I'm not sure if I addressed your question. But that's what I have.
Vrajalilaji, you have a question.
Haribol, Tara Prabhu. I actually don't have a question. I just wanted to thank you so much. It's so nice to see you. I haven't seen you in many years. And what I appreciate so much about you is you're so consistent. As a brahmachari, you were enlivening, enthusing, inspiring so many devotees. And as a grihasta, you're doing the same thing. And it's just beautiful to be able to see that kind of consistency in a Vaishnava. Thank you so very much.
Hare Krishna, so nice to see you. Please give me your blessings that I can. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. I echo Rajalila's sentiments. It's so good to see you and hear from you.
I'm going to have to try to visit Gita Nagari so I can get all of your wonderful association.
Yes, please do.
Time to come to the States, Krishna willing.
So devotees, do we have any more pending questions, quandaries for our speaker today? Otherwise, if there is nothing else, I will encourage everybody to unmute yourselves and express your appreciation, which I also have my appreciation at a short notice that you step up and gave us a very revealing view into what Prabhupada wrote on the Bhagavatam. So in our name, thank you.
Haribol.
Haribol.
Thank you, Tara Prabhu.
Krishna, thank you. Haribol.
Haribol.
Haribol, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Aye, thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You also. Haribol.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Gaura Hari. Haribol. From the Goshala. Gaura Hari.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Jai Shri Radhe.